What if Ferrari hasn't shown you its real car yet? And what they are going to test at Fiorano is just the thing that can change everything. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Because while everyone is looking at the results of the first races, the Scuderia is preparing something much more important in silence. Some tests where they will not only ride, but where they will understand for the first time how their SF26 really works in extreme conditions. And here is the key. It is not just any test. It is a controlled simulation of rain, the same scenario that already exposed all the car's weaknesses, and that could now become its greatest weapon. The strongest thing is that within the team there is already surprise, because what they are discovering with this car is nothing like what they expected at the beginning of the season. So the question is inevitable. Are we about to see the true level of Ferrari, and why has this already shocked Hamilton and Leclerc? What Ferrari is about to do at Fiorano is not simply another session on the calendar. It is actually one of the most critical moments of its entire season, because it comes just after a start full of doubts, where the SF26 has shown behaviors that are difficult to understand, especially in rainy conditions, making it clear that they have not yet unlocked all their real potential. And this is where everything changes, because these tests on April 9th and 10th, although officially organized by Pirelli to develop tires for 2027, hide an opportunity that Ferrari cannot miss, since they allow them to ride without the usual limitations of the regulations, something that in Formula One is pure gold when you are trying to understand a car as complex as this. Ferrari is not going to Fiorano just to test tires. It is going to recreate a scenario that in the race is practically impossible to control. Fully reproducible rain conditions thanks to the circuit's artificial water system, which means that the engineers can repeat exactly the same conditions over and over again, isolating variables, understanding reactions, and above all, obtaining clean data, something that neither Hamilton nor Leclerc could have in the real chaos of a Grand Prix. Because there is a key detail that many are overlooking. The SF26 is not a conventional car. It is a single-seater that introduces new concepts such as active aerodynamics and electronic systems that are much more sensitive to track conditions, and that completely changes the way it responds when the asphalt is wet, generating unpredictable behavior that already seriously complicated the drivers in the first tests of the season. In fact, the context itself makes it clear. In Barcelona, when they ran for the first time in rainy conditions, the car was described as very challenging, not only because of the lack of grip, but because the team was trying to understand at the same time how to manage tires, and how this new aerodynamic philosophy reacted in a completely different environment than the dry one. And this is where Fiorano comes in as a key piece of the puzzle, because now Ferrari has the opportunity to return to that same scenario, but with absolute control, without traffic, without strategy, without race pressure, simply focused on understanding the car in its purest state, something that can mark a before and after in its development. This is not just preparation, it is diagnosis, it is discovery. It is the moment where Ferrari can begin to understand why their car has not performed as they expected, and more importantly, how they can unlock that hidden performance that they have not yet shown on the track. And while all this is happening, there is an additional uncertainty that increases the internal tension even more. It is not even clear who will be behind the wheel in these tests, whether Hamilton, Leclerc, or both, which demonstrates the extent to which Ferrari considers these days as something absolutely strategic, where each lap can change the direction of the car's development. Because in the end, what is at stake here is not just improvement, it is understanding something that, until now, not even its own pilots have been able to fully decipher. But if all this is already important, what really changes the picture is what Ferrari is not saying openly, because Fiorano is not only a test to understand the car, it is also the first step to prepare an evolution that can completely redefine its season. While the team works in those controlled rain conditions, in parallel, they are already evaluating how all these learnings fit with a much larger package of improvements that is on the way. And this is where it all starts to make sense. Ferrari is not just trying to correct mistakes, it is trying to rebuild the SF26's behavior from the ground up. Because the problem is not a single piece. It is not just performance in the rain, nor a simple setup adjustment. It is the interaction between multiple factors: active aerodynamics, electronic management, tire behavior, and how all that changes when grip disappears. And that's exactly what they're going to attack at Fiorano, lap after lap, simulation after simulation. This is where the situation becomes even more interesting, because this type of testing allows something that is impossible in a race, repeating the same scenario over and over again until you understand every reaction of the car to the millimeter. There is no uncertainty, there is no chaos, just data, and in today's Formula One, that is power. And precisely for that reason, this is already generating an impact within the team, because when you start to isolate variables and really understand what is happening, many times you discover that the car was not as you thought, that there's more potential, or that there are deeper problems than expected. This explains why Ferrari is paying so much attention to these days, even more than in some Grand Prix sessions, because they know that what they discover here will define how they evolve the car in the next races, especially before reaching key dates on the calendar where the improvements will be decisive. And in the midst of all this, there is one factor that cannot be ignored: the pilots. Hamilton arrives at this stage still in the process of adaptation, trying to understand a car radically different from what he has driven in recent years, while Leclerc, who knows Ferrari's structure better, has also expressed doubts about the behavior of the SF26 in variable conditions. That means that what happens at Fiorano not only impacts the car, it directly impacts the confidence of both drivers, their driving style, how they attack each corner when the conditions are not perfect. Because in the end, when a driver doesn't completely trust the car, he loses time. But when he starts to understand it, when everything falls into place, that's where true performance appears. And Ferrari is right at that critical point. At the moment where they can go from a difficult, unpredictable, and limited car to a completely different one, capable of truly competing. But for that to happen, they first have to solve the mystery that SF26 has been hiding since the beginning of the season. And Fiorano is the place where everything can start to change. And this is where everything explodes, because what Ferrari is about to discover at Fiorano is not just a one-time improvement, it is the possible confirmation that the SF26 has a completely different potential than what we have seen so far. Because when a team reaches the point of being able to control all the variables, of repeating conditions, of understanding exactly how the car responds, it stops making assumptions and starts finding real answers. And that, at this point in the season, can change absolutely everything. Ferrari knows that it is in an extreme situation. The initial results have not reflected what they expected. The car has been inconsistent and, above all, difficult to interpret. But that is precisely why Fiorano is so important, because here they can confirm if the problem was one of understanding, or if there really are structural limits in SF26. And this is what begins to generate internal impact, because when you begin to understand a car that previously seemed unpredictable, suddenly everything changes. The setup becomes clearer, the decisions are more precise, and the performance begins to appear almost immediately. This is where Hamilton and Leclerc come in. Because we're not just talking about engineers and data, we're talking about two drivers who need to feel that change on the track. If at Fiorano they begin to notice that the car responds better, that confidence increases, that they can attack without that uncertainty, then Ferrari will not only have solved a technical problem, it will have unlocked its true competitive level. And that is what has really begun to surprise within the team, because the first signs indicate that the car, in the right environment, can behave in a very different way than what we saw in the races. What seemed like a weakness could become an advantage. Because if Ferrari manages to master the behavior of the SF26 in low grip conditions, they will not only be solving their biggest problem, they will be gaining a tool that other teams do not have controlled at the same level. And here is the final key. Everything that happens in Fiorano does not stay in Fiorano. Every piece of information, every adjustment, every discovery is directly connected to the next evolutions of the car, to the decisions that will be made in the following races, and to the complete direction of the development of the SF26 in 2026. So no, this is not a simple test. It is the moment in which Ferrari can go from doubt to certainty, from a misunderstood car to a real weapon. And in the end, it all comes down to a single idea. Ferrari is at that point where a single understanding can change everything. Because during the first races we saw a car full of doubts, difficult to read, inconsistent, but now we know that the problem was not just performance, it was a lack of understanding. And that's exactly what Fiorano can solve. Here there are no distractions, no racing chaos, no external factors, just Ferrari in front of its own car, breaking down every reaction, every behavior, every detail that until now had been a mystery. And if in these tests they achieve what they are looking for, if they really manage to understand how the SF26 works in limit conditions, then everything changes. Because a car that was previously unpredictable becomes an exploitable car. A car that generated doubts becomes one that generates confidence. And in today's Formula One, that difference is everything. That is why what is happening in Fiorano is much bigger than it seems, is not a test, is the turning point of an entire season. The moment where Ferrari can decide if it continues pursuing solutions, or if it finally starts to truly compete. And now the big question is inevitable. Are we about to see the real Ferrari, Or does this SF26 still have problems that not even Fiorano can solve? Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.